You know, freaks, sometimes you just got to wake up and you got to grab life by the bull horns and ride the bull. That's what we're here to do on this Friday, September 27th, 2024. RHR. Day late, but always here. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Marty? Love a good, love when the coin pumps. Feels good.
It's always great when the coin pumps. I'm doing good. Woke up. Parker Lewis, Will Cole have been berating me for months now to join them at CrossFit. And this morning I finally joined them. It was me, Will, Parker, Jimmy Song, Justin Moon, and Sahil. It was a good crew. Got a nice CrossFit workout. And CrossFit's not my favorite. I puked. I'm not a big high cardio, high intensity workout guy. I always puke. I have since high school. So I got a good workout, good puke in this morning. Went to the coffee shop. Ease my way into my day. Now we're here talking to you, feeling energized. And the corn's pumping.
That's a great crew. That's awesome. Sorry, I was letting people know we were live, doing some housekeeping.
How's your week been? How's your travels been?
It's been good, nice and relaxing. Trying to focus on what's important.
You seem relaxed.
I'm in my Zen phase.
It's a good time to be in the Zen phase when things. Dumps may be behind us.
God.
Dumps may be behind us, freaks. They may be behind us. It feels like it. Now everybody go put their limit orders in like 20% below this price. It just feels that way.
There will be dumps. It's a free market. And humans are inherently emotional. Just stay humble and stack sats.
Sage advice. Ugh. I'm setting up here too. What a week. A lot going on.
There's always, it's so hard to keep up. Try our best. We know a lot of you freaks rely on us to stay up to date. But it really is just a constant whirlwind.
A barrage
I think
of news.
That's part of what I'm trying to do better with, because before RHR existed, I would just take breaks where I just wouldn't pay attention to anything. But because we do the show every week and we've done it for 6 years, you gotta pay attention so that the freaks can be made aware of things. So I'm trying to channel a Zen while still being relatively plugged in, which I think I've been doing better with lately.
Is bull market back going to come back?
I'm going to try it.
Should we remind the freaks of bull market, Matt?
Only in the private group chats. That's where I let off my steam. Publicly, I'm gonna try and stay as humble as possible. And I think like there's just a new realization for me that a lot of people are retarded. You're not going to convince everyone, and you just need to focus on the ride or dies. Focus on what you actually have actionable change over, and just keep shipping things, right? Whether it's the podcast, whether it's open sats, whether it's 1031, just keep shipping things and pushing the ball forward, and try not to get wrapped up into our increasingly shortened drama cycles of bullshit.
Yeah. Agreed there. And as it comes to chilling big, I've reached my Bitcoin Zen in that regards, in terms of not going to friends and family, being like, get in. And there's some validation of that this week. I think we have the luxury of this platform where I'm sure you have a similar situation that I do, where friends and family know that I run this podcast, run TFTC, write the newsletter, run 1031 with you, Grant, Jonathan, and John. And that's been my strategy for like the last 3 or 4 years. It's like, hey, I've got this information. If you really want to learn, like listen to a few podcasts, read the newsletter, follow up on the companies that we're investing in at 1031. There's some signal there. Those are likely the companies I would recommend that you interact with in the Bitcoin space. And high school buddy, lacrosse buddy of my brother and I texted my brother earlier this week and thanked my brother and told him to pass along a message to thank me as well, because he's gotten into Bitcoin. He's on a Bitcoin standard. He's very happy. That's the best way to do it. Light show.
Yeah, they can listen to the show, read the newsletters if they want. They could take it or leave it. I mean, the only family member that I've really convinced
it's a great
to
story.
go all in on Bitcoin is my brother-in-law. And this was before he was my brother-in-law, before he married my sister. He was basically doing like opposition research, right? He was like, okay, like I need to make sure like I'm on the good side of her older brother. So I'm going to listen to his podcast. And we had never met yet, right? So he was just like, I'm going to listen to his podcast and see how he thinks about things. And before we ever met, me and you had like 100% got him into Bitcoin just through the podcast. And I've personally tried to get family members in, like at weddings and different family events and whatnot, and it just always fails. But this my brother-in-law is just all in Bitcoin. He's just ready to go full send, stacking sats, and it was all because of the podcast and no direct touch by me, which is just crazy.
That's speaking of this. I mean, I'm sure you saw it on Nostr. I posted the note, but yesterday morning on my way into the Commons, I got an Uber in, hop in the Uber, and I hear, like, open the door and immediately hear Jack Mahler's voice. I'm like, whoa. And then I sit down in the back, and I think I had Apple CarPlay, and it was Peter Schiff first Jack Mahler's. I was like, oh, like, you a Bitcoin guy? He was like, yeah. Like, you like Jack? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm a good friend of Jack. Like, this is pretty cool. Have a conversation. He listened to TFTC the day before, but that's like his strategy. He was telling me on the 20-minute ride into work was...
Wait, the Uber driver was a TFTC listener?
Yeah, it was insane.
Look at that.
And but he was like, his strategy is he's like semi-retired, does some real estate, drives Uber from 4 a.m. to around noon, and just blasts Bitcoin podcasts to try to
what model car?
It was like I think it was like a Ford. It was like one of the Ford sedans. Nothing too luxurious. Very humble. But great anecdote, like hop in the
shout
car.
out to you, Uber driver, if you're listening.
Shout out to you. He may be. His son got him in.
Do you know his first name?
Yeah, Michael. Michael's his
Shout
first
out
name.
to you, Michael, the Uber driver.
Shout out to you if you're listening.
If he's listening to this while driving Uber, and so shout out to you, passengers. Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're a passenger of Michael's Uber right now, follow Michael's steps. He knows what he's doing. But it was yeah, I think the point being is, like, I think podcasts, he wasn't listening to TFTC when I hopped in. He was listening to that debate. And I don't know, I think over the last cycle, obviously there's a ton of Bitcoin content. I do think it's making an impact, because he was telling me how he's renounced shitcoins. He like gets Bitcoin now just from hours of listening to podcast, and is all in on stacking sats. I think there's many more Michaels out there.
There's many such cases. I mean, I also think just like a time thing, like people just get wrecked trading shitcoins. And then like if you hold on to shitcoins long enough, you end up being Bitcoin only eventually because they go to zero. So it is also a time thing. But I mean, we've talked about this in the past. I mean, if you go, so RHR is 6 years old, TFTC is a little bit older. Like Stefan's podcast is like around the same time as TFTC. So they all kind of came out around the same time. If you go back like 8 years, like it was all shitcoin dominated. Like there was no path where you couldn't touch the stove first. And then like it required a lot more learned experiences. But now there's, I mean, everyone has a Bitcoin podcast now. So it's a brave new one out there.
I love it. I love the explosion of Bitcoin podcast, a different flavor for each individual and their particular taste. I think that's massively beneficial. People come to understand Bitcoin in different ways and different people producing podcasts are able to connect with the way people receive information and connect with information. It's all good.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's beautiful to witness and be a small part of it.
Yeah. And with that, let's jump into it. Let's go to Clark's dashboard. The price of Bitcoin today is 66,270 cuck-bucks. One cuck-buck's going to get you 1,509 sats. We're sitting at a $1.31 trillion market cap. We're at block height 863,094. We had a difficulty adjustment. I believe it was yesterday. No, 2 days ago. It was a downward adjustment of negative 4.6%. Currently 1,770 blocks away from the next adjustment, estimated to be on October 10th. So I believe that's 2 weeks from today, if my mental math is correct. As of right now, it's looking like a negative 8.8% adjustment, so potentially having back-to-back downward adjustments. Block's been coming in at 10 minutes and 54 seconds on average. A little early in that epoch, so that's subject to change, obviously. There are currently 137.28 transactions in Clark's mempool. If we go over to mempool.space, you will see that they have 196,541 transactions. Mempool, or transaction fees, not as low as they have been earlier this week. High priority, 20 sats per VByte. Medium, 18 sats per VByte. And low priority, 15 sats per VByte. Struggling with some heartburn right now, freaks. I gotta take
it's that busy mempool. It's acting up Marty's stomach.
Hop in here. I need a moment.
First of all, shout out Mav21 who zapped us 10,000 sats in the Nostr live chat where the rider dies 12, and Sky who zapped us 2.1 thousand sats, 2,100 sats. I see Bitcoin Bugle is in the YouTube chat. Just a reminder that the Nostr live chat is rhr.tv/stream, but it seems that we've inspired their newest article that I expect to go out shortly after this show, which is 1031 launches a Waymo competitor that forces riders to listen to Bitcoin podcasts during rides. Just to be clear, we would not fund that. It's a great idea. I personally I'm not, you can count me out of the self-driving car thing. I care about like my life and my family too much to do that.
Easy way to get Michael Hastings. It's just to hop in a Waymo.
I said Sky zapped us, but it's Ski. So I've just been corrected.
Yeah, how did you get that wrong?
I don't know. I froze up. You put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
With your mempool heartburn.
That was bad. That got me. I almost had an uncomfortable belch there. All right, getting to the list. First up, we have Ross Stevens, Bitcoin is Protected Speech. Ross put out, what would we call this, a paper?
A paper. He's calling it a paper, so we're calling it a paper. What a badass.
Yeah, this is incredible to see. Great. It looks like Ross Stevens, founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Holdings Group, and the founder and executive chairman of NYDIG, has been reading his beauty on. This is really cool to see, particularly since it's coming from Ross Stevens, who is at the heart of Wall Street and one of the pioneers on Wall Street in terms of really pushing Bitcoin and going all in on Bitcoin with NYDIG, Wolf, and other initiatives. And it's something we've talked about a lot about. And obviously, considering the number of cases that are going on right now, whether it's Tornado Cash, Samurai, it's a pretty bold paper to put out there by Ross, and makes some very good points. Bitcoin is just code at the end of the day. The network passes messages along about what exists where, and Bitcoin is speech, which is harnessed to transfer value, among other purposes.
And in America, speech is protected. We have free speech in this country. So as a result, Bitcoin and the usage of it and the development of it should be protected as well. And I think he made a very coherent, strong argument. I think a lot of us believe this to be the fact and have stated so in the past. But this is, I mean, coming, like you said, coming from Ross, one of our strongest suits in the space, and having like proper, legal research and whatnot included in it, it sets a really strong precedent, and it's really good to have out there. And I mean, the timing is incredibly important too. Like right now, more than ever, we need people to step up and put these strong arguments forward.
Yeah, and it's a pretty bold statement too, because Section C of the paper, Bitcoin is political. Since its inception, Bitcoin has also been political. Bitcoin was designed to serve as an alternative to government-controlled fiat currencies such as the U.S. dollar. It was created in reaction to government-led bank bailouts during the Great Recession, as evidenced by Satoshi Nakamoto's inaugural message criticizing the bailouts. Satoshi envisioned that Bitcoin would be a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust in banks or governments.
Yeah, I mean, he just goes really strong. There's no pussyfooting around it. And I think he's absolutely right.
I did too. And like, this is, I mean, Ross, thank you for doing this. This is something we've talked a lot about over the years is Bitcoiners, whether they be individuals, companies, councils that get together and try to fit Bitcoin into the framework put forth by governments, regulators, advocate groups that they're trying to appease. That is not the way to win at the long run. You got to be on the attack. You've got to own the frame. You've got to set the frame. And I think this paper setting the frame of Bitcoin as speech is just owning it and saying, no, this is a completely new asset, a completely new network, a completely new protocol that you have to look at it in a very nuanced and specific way. You can't form fit it into the incumbent system and try to thrust the labels of that incumbent system on Bitcoin. It's completely new, and putting the flag in the ground, again, Ross doing this is incredible to see. Thank you, Ross Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. We appreciate you. Absolutely crushed it. Everyone should go read it. It's hosted on NYDIG's website. The link is in the show notes. Check it out this weekend.
Saturday morning reading, freaks. You got some homework. And Matt is very good at crafting the list, because the next up on the list is Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm to face criminal trial. Judge rules. And more importantly, there's
two Tornado Cash trials. There's one in the Netherlands and there's one in the U.S. This is the U.S. one, to be clear.
Yeah, and this is the judge's statement this week is not good. And the SEC is already building on the statement by the judge in the court.
It's fucked up.
Yeah, it's very fucked up. So the court finds that the government has a substantial interest in promoting a secure financial system by combating money laundering, by combating the operation of unregistered money transmitting services, and by combating the evasion of sanctions. These interests are wholly unrelated to the suppression of free expression, and the applicability of these laws to destroy conduct does not burden substantially more speech than necessary, the judge said. Judge Falia also said that control is not needed to violate Section 1960, which bans the operation of unlicensed money transmitters. Tornado Cash is not significantly different from the other crypto mixing services already recognized as money transmitters in case law. She added, she also dismissed Storm's defense that his actions couldn't violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act because software is exempt. She stressed that the laws target financial crimes, not coding. Publishing software alone isn't enough for an unbreathed challenge. Code used to direct a computer's functions isn't protected speech, and Storm's software allegedly facilitated money laundering and sanctions evasion. Mr. Storm is not being charged with exporting Tornado Cash software, but with laundering funds using the Tornado Cash service, which definitionally extends beyond that software, said Judge Falia. I'm just going to continue reading because this is all very important. At this stage in the case, the court cannot simply accept Mr. Storm's narrative that he is being prosecuted merely for writing code. If the jury ultimately accepts this narrative, then it will acquit. But there's no basis for me to decide that as a matter of law, she added. Roman Storm is now set to stand trial in December. If convicted of all 3 charges, he's facing up to 45 years in prison. And like I said, this is a very dangerous precedent. The SEC is already jumping on it. And essentially what they're trying to say is they're trying to go after communications apps right now. So this could, if this trial goes the wrong way, the jury doesn't acquit with the framing that is put forth by the judge in this case, there's a strong argument to be made that this would force messaging apps to have to get licensed.
WhatsApp, iMessage, Signal, Telegram.
Because technically, like Gary Gensler came out yesterday or the day before, I believe, and said these communications apps, these messaging apps can create marketplaces where people can coordinate too.
They're the most common, I mean, especially in the developing world, a lot of commerce happens just in group chats and DMs.
Yeah, we talked about this in the past when local Bitcoins was...
think about this precedent. And first of all, just think about how absurd it is. They're trying to ruin this guy's life. And their argument is that you don't have to have control of money to launder it, which is an insane concept, logically speaking. And this is, one of the reasons why Ross's paper and the timing of it is so important, and why I think it's impossible to overstate how grateful I am that he released such a well-reasoned paper at this moment in time. Like it takes a level of balls to do it. And unfortunately, what we've seen in the space is most people don't have those.
Bitcoin is a revolution. It's going to take balls. As you can see with this Tornado Cash case, the government, in my opinion, is extending the powers and bending the interpretation of laws that have been written in the past to garner more control over our lives, over our systems. And as we've said many times before, the throwing the baby out with the bathwater by putting all these restrictions. Like, imagine if all these chatting apps, Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram, have to get licensed. Like, they're going to have to KYC their users and then arguably like track their communications within their servers so that they can get subpoenaed to.
I mean, yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
The goal is never, and then criminals are still going to figure out ways to do criminal things. Like the goal of all of this stuff has always just been increased surveillance and control over average people, over people that have no intention of committing a crime, that are just trying to be productive members of society and care for their families and care for themselves and care for their communities. This is the path we've been on for a while, and it's taken a dramatic, strong uptrend towards dystopia in the last 8 months, 12 months, 16 months.
I mean, it's just been like a slow rise since the Patriot Act.
It's like slow frog boiling stuff, but then it has its spikes, right? If dystopia was on a line chart, like there's like the Patriot Act's a perfect example, right? Like that would be when the Patriot Act passed, that would have been one of the spikes. And then it does like slow boil, and then you have a spike. And we're in a spike right now. It feels like we're in a spike right now.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have it on the list, but I wrote about it earlier this week, recorded with Caitlin Long as well. And you want to talk about the developments of Operation Choke Point 2.0 as they pertain to the banking crisis that unfolded last year?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Do you think that now is a good time to talk about that?
Yeah, because I do think it ties well with this, because it's another example of the current administration being arbitrary, capricious, and bending the law. not bending the law, outrightly breaking the law and going against the Constitution. So the update there is last week, Elaine Hetrick, who is the chief administrative officer of Silvergate, filed an affidavit as part of Silvergate's bankruptcy proceedings. And in that affidavit, she essentially confirmed what many of us in the industry have either speculated or had very good knowledge that this is true. And what she confirmed was that Silvergate was completely solvent when the regulators forced them to wind down. They didn't force them to wind down. They didn't say you have to wind down. They essentially gave them an ultimatum, which was you have to reduce your exposure, your capital exposure to Bitcoin and crypto related businesses to 15% of your overall capital that is held at the bank. At the time, Silvergate had 99.5% of their customer base in the Bitcoin or broader digital asset industry. And so that was their whole customer base, essentially. And the assumption is that the government gave them a very quick timeline by which to pivot their whole business and reduce their exposure to these counterparts to 15%. And so on March 8th, 2023, Silvergate made the decision just to wind down and say, we can't do that. So we're going to wind down and we're going to give the money back to our customers. And they did that successfully. There was a run on their bank. They were the only bank that could probably have done this due to the fact that they managed their balance sheet.
That has done that, right?
Yeah. The only bank that, yeah. So they're the only bank that has done this. And having talked to Alan Lane, and they had really good risk management practices in terms of the capital, how they managed their balance sheet. They understood that the Bitcoin and broader digital asset industries were very volatile, and so they built their balance sheet in a way and their capital reserves in a way that ensured that if there was a run on the bank, they'd be able to get everybody their cash back as quickly as possible and get everybody their cash back at the end of the day. They did that. But if you remember, walk down memory lane around this time, this was post FTX blow up. FTX was a Silvergate customer. You had Mark Cahodes going on public vendetta to basically besmirch Silvergate. He had a short on. He wrote a short report on them. So he was short the stock, and then streaming publicly about it, went directly to Elizabeth Warren to highlight Silvergate. And then Elizabeth Warren, the regulators, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, I believe the OCC as well, essentially extrajudicially stepped in and put that ultimatum forth to Silvergate. So they
basically took them behind the shed and shot them.
Yes.
It's like a responsibly run bank, and they just took them behind the shed and shot them.
Yeah. And it's not only Silvergate, it was Signature as well. Signature Bank.
Less well run.
Well,
right?
that was the narrative. Again, going back to narratives, but if Elaine Hetrick talked about Signature in her affidavit as well, and essentially highlighted some comments that Barney Frank made, who, funnily enough, was the one half of the Frank-Dodd Act, which put in all these consumer protections at the banking level post 2008. But if you remember with Signature, they got taken out on a Sunday night by the FDIC and the NYDFS, I believe, which is completely abnormal. If you listen to the episode I did with Caitlin, they typically do this on a Friday night so that over the weekend, the banks are going to acquire the assets of the failing bank and get together and figure out what they're going to pick apart and who's going to take what. The fact that they did it on a Sunday night was very odd. Barney Frank publicly came out that night or Monday morning and said they didn't even give us a chance to open our operations Monday and prove that we were solvent. He was pretty confident that they could have given the chance. And the narrative around Signature at the time was that the commercial real estate exposure is what was taking them over. But in the affidavit, Elaine Hetrick highlighted that they were forced to sell their assets, not only sell their assets, I believe to Flagstar Bank or Flagger Bank, when they made that sale, they had to spin out their Bitcoin and digital asset related business arm, which was about $4 billion at the time. So it looked like a targeted attack on the banks that were servicing our industry, incited that banking crisis. So quickly thereafter, you had Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, a bunch of other smaller regional banks go under, and it was essentially because the Biden administration, with heavy influence from Elizabeth Warren, incited a bank run by targeting Silvergate specifically, and then Signature, and then you had the banking crisis, which led to BTFP, and it cost the FDIC. Yeah. Cost the FDIC $40 billion. The FDIC had to step in and inject $40 billion into the system, and this has increased FDIC insurance premiums for every bank across the United States, and other expenses have been levied on the taxpayers. And so you have a situation where Elizabeth Warren and crew, due to the fact that they don't like Bitcoin, they want a CBDC, they unlawfully and unconstitutionally targeted the banks that are servicing our industry, and they incited a bank run that hasn't been seen since 2008.
Okay, great. They took the two largest banks that serviced our industry, and they pulled them behind the shed and shot them.
Yeah, but now, like, the big development this week has been confirmed by Silvergate. Essentially, is that like, hey, sent the bat signal out, and they killed us.
Trusted third parties are security holds.
No, but like, it is a big story. Like these,
I agree.
Again,
I agree.
Tying it with like Tornado Cash and these
It's
regulators.
incredibly fucked up, corrupt politics, bullshit, fucked up. It's just also boring. But I agree. You did a good job. It was very comprehensive.
The freaks
Very
love it. The comments are going crazy. They're saying, thank you for this information.
Bonding over being bored over here.
You know, I'm seeing a lot of, okay, great, LOL. These people are fucking criminals. They are.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Paulie in the Nostr chat for his 21,000 sat zap before Marty went on.
Thank you for the zaps, freaks. I mean, if you like that rant, let's have a little test here.
The zaps
putting myself on the spot. No. If you like the rant, zap us. I know there's a few of you with some sats in your Lightning wallets. Crickets. Come on. Give me.
And I saw the Bitcoin Bugle has moved to the Nostr chat, which is great, and zapped us 4,200 sats. Thank you.
Yellow, shut the hell up. You lost consciousness for a second there. You're thank you, Reebs, for the 69 sat.
That's like a bare minimum. That was a pity zap.
Nice.
Okay, next topic. That's
HUD 8 and Bitmain to launch the next gen ASIC miner. This name sucks. The U3 S21X EXPH. Bitmain, come on. But we talked about this probably about like a month ago at this point. Highest hashing, most efficient machine on the market. I believe it's 800 terahash per second, 13 joules per terahash. I forget what they were pricing it at. Does it have the price in there, Logan? If so, can you highlight it? It looks like they're doing this. The new news here is that they're doing it in partnership with HUD 8. So HUD 8 plans to deploy the model in Q2 of 2025 through an around 15 exahash hosting deployment with potential transition to self-mining through purchase option. So as is typical with Bitmain, it looks like it's 860 terahash per second, so even larger than I said earlier. So it looks like Bitmain will be plugging these in, making revenue with them. HUD 8 will be hosting them. And then HUD 8 will have the option to buy those ASICs and self-mine if they want to. HUD 8 said, our partnership with Bitmain has allowed us to advance our thinking on ASIC compute and create a more scalable model for data center design as we expand our footprint.
Is this the first Bitmain rig that is like shaped like a regular server rack?
I believe so. They have had Hydro units in the past, but they were in the shoebox form factor. So I think this may be the first. I know MicroBT has come out with the rack form factor, and this is good to see. This is where the industry should go. The fact that we have these large shoebox miners. I'll pull mine up here. Logan, you can go full screen. But, like this chunky, and like they're even bigger now. Imagine like 2 of these is essentially 1 ASIC right now, and they're completely inefficient from a space perspective and from a cooling perspective. And so it's about time.
They look like a big shoebox. Yeah, they're taller than a shoebox.
Yeah, they're like 2 of these now. This is an S3, I believe.
Yeah, it's like when they came out with the new units, they just like stacked them on top of each other.
Yeah. So it's a good thing that we're moving to this form factor. It will make it easier, I believe, for other data center infrastructure providers to service the market. However, particularly these cooling, these hydro-cooled units is going to be more expensive upfront. CapEx to build the infrastructure. You got to find a geographic location that's close to water. It's going to have specific electrical engineering specifications that need to be met. But all in all, I think it's great that we're moving to this model. You'll be able to condense a much larger amount of hash rate in a smaller footprint. These things are going to be insanely energy dense. It's going to be insane.
It's just kind of funny, and it's important to point out, just like in the article, there's like a Bitmain exec, like he's on stage and he's like got the slide behind him. He's like, look, we have the form factor that like every data center has used for the last 2 decades. Groundbreaking. But I know there's more nuance to it than that. I mean, I like part of the reason is it's easier to air cool in that like box format.
Yes.
Because you can get one big fan to like hit everything in a big way.
It's just like from an operational standpoint, it's easier. It's like you literally pull the rack out if you need to change hash boards. You can do that instead of having to like literally unscrew the shoebox form factor, take out an individual hash board. It's going to make things much more efficient. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Oh, also shout out Average Gary for 21,000 sat sap.
Shout out to you, Average Gary.
It was not after your bank thing though.
Yes, it was.
I don't think so.
No, I think he said, "Love the bank rant."
I don't see that. I think you just made that up.
No, he said that. He DM'd me. Last note on this. This is going to be very disruptive to the market. Hash price is currently sitting, I believe, around 5 cents with the downward difficulty adjustment and the price pumping, which is still near historic lows. And so if you have, we're at 4.8 cents per terahash per day. It's going to be tough out there if they start plugging these in. If they can produce these in mass and get them plugged in, they're saying Q2 2025. So that'll be April, May, unless the price could help if the price pumps significantly between now and then. It could be easier for people, but these machines are going to be so energy dense, and it's going to be incredibly easy to increase hash rate significantly. If these hit the market, they work, and people are buying them. And so anybody with old gen machines are going to be feeling even more pain than they are now, which is historical levels of pain. So if you're out there running a prop mining business, be prepared.
Mining, one of the hardest businesses in the world. Yeah, it's cutthroat out there, guys.
Yes, it is. And speaking of cutthroat, we've been covering the cutthroat attempted hostile takeover of Bitfarms by Riot, and there was a settlement reached there this week. Hostile takeover is over, it seems. Under the agreement, Riot cannot acquire more than 20% of Bitfarms without board approval. Additionally, Bitfarms co-founder Andres Finkelstein resigned from the board of directors, and Amy Freeman, proposed by Riot, replaced him. Key terms of the agreement include Andres stepping down, Bitfarms appointing Amy Freeman. Riot has agreed to withdraw its June 24th, 2024 requisition as amended to accept customary standstill provisions to the Bitfarms 2026 annual meeting, with certain exceptions. At the special meeting, shareholders will be asked to approve an expansion of the board from 5 members to 6 members, to elect an independent director nominated by the board to serve as a 6th member of the board, blah, blah, blah. Company was provided Riot with certain rights subject to certain exceptions to purchase shares of the company, provided Riot holds 15% or more of the outstanding common shares of the company. So now Riot is still the largest shareholder of Bitfarms. It attempted to acquire the company earlier this year, accusing Bitfarms leadership of poor corporate governance practices and consistent inability to realize Bitfarms' full potential. Ben Gagnon, Chief Executive Officer of Bitfarm, very underrated coiner. Love Ben. We are pleased to reach this agreement with Riot and look forward to turning our full attention to executing our growth strategy. Blah, blah, blah. Hostile takeover looks over. I guess that begs the question, like, was this an efficient use of shareholder capital by Riot? Was this just like a big waste of money? Like, obviously, there was a lot of corporate speak in this press release, but I don't know. I think this could look bad for Riot at the end of the day. Shareholders could get pissed that they tried to do this and failed and spent a fuck ton of money doing it.
I mean, it's not like the money was lost.
No, they're still holding like they got to hope Bitfarms pumps, but
and they can sell it if they want to.
Yeah.
I think this. I mean, I'm not a lawyer and just a humble Bitcoiner that stacks sats and holds my net worth in Bitcoin and all my family savings in Bitcoin and doesn't trade Bitcoin mining stocks. But this seems like a win for both parties. And I will say, like, when this first came out, it was like a special moment for the two of us because this was the first time that we had two friends engaged in a hostile takeover. It was like, I felt like, you always ask, like, when do you become an adult, right? It's like maybe you become an adult when you have two friends that are engaged in a public hostile takeover. So it's nice to see that there appears to be a resolution between both groups that everyone wins it.
Yeah.
And also, it would behoove me to say, just completely separately, that Average Gary has now zapped us another 21,000 sats. And in all caps, he says it was before Marty. So thank you for your support and correcting the record there.
Noted, Gary. Noted. And we're dumping. We're below 66,000. You're welcome. Just try to get cheap sats for the freaks, It's psychological mind games, reverse jinx.
I will say, like, on the adult side, like, I think you become an adult when you have basically a micro economy of people relying on you. Like, have you ever laid in bed and had that realization? It's like, damn, like, if I fuck shit up, like, there's like a decent amount of people that will have negative consequences on their life as a result of my fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, it's
kind of heady
with the family, with the kids and the wife.
But then also, like, everything that goes around that too.
No, I'm a simple left side of the bell curve 80 IQ. I'm just like, kids, wife. Particularly, I mean, fortunate enough that my wife doesn't work too. Like, that's what I'm like, holy shit, I cannot fuck up. She hasn't worked in like 5 years, and I would not want her to have to go back into the workforce. We're not going to die though. Come on, good vibes. We're going to live forever.
I dig that. Next topic.
Take care of your microeconomy, freaks. Next topic, big one, dropped yesterday. Swan sues former leadership. Wasn't a hostile takeover. It was looks like Swan is claiming that there was a what would we call this? A coup, internal coup to spin out the mining business. Is this coup territory? Are we cooing here?
Ivan, thank you for this app. And speaking clearly with all the caps. So Swan has sued former leadership. We in the show notes we have a link to the entire lawsuit. I suggest that everyone go read it. I think it's important that people realize that this is obviously Swan's perspective on the situation. It should be interesting to see how the other side responds. It is known that this was going to be public as well. So it's important to keep that in mind as a frame of reference. I would say that it would be incredibly interesting to hear the perspective of former Swan leadership that has left the company, and some are involved in this lawsuit, including their chief investment officer and their former president. I don't think either of them are named as defendants in the lawsuit, but they both have left the company or were pushed out, or who knows what the true story is there. So it'll be interesting to hear their perspective. It'll be interesting to hear the perspective of Swan board members and other people affiliated with the company. It's a pretty crazy document. That's why I like people should read it. I do not want to say too much things on air right now, just because there's desperate people throwing lawsuits around. So like I'll leave it at that. And if you haven't listened to RHR 286 back in January,
You got the number.
maybe go re-listen to that.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is don't have any insight into the internal readings, but having read
neither of us do.
the case,
Corey
the
made that very clear back in January, publicly.
Actually, no, I'm going to reserve my thoughts for private.
I didn't want to be the guys that don't cover it, so it's in the show notes. You should read it. But once again, just remember this is one side's perspective, and I think there's very few people that know the full truth, and it should be interesting because more information will likely come out.
Beware, freaks. Beware. Next up on the list, we've got BTCPay Server team releasing the Riga case study. BTCPay Server team, if you were in Riga, you'll know.
Sorry.
You're just going to bulldoze me like that?
No, before we move on, Rad Vladdy is saying in the YouTube comments that the stuff Raphael Zaguri was doing looks to be vicious and malicious. I just would like to just put it out there on the record that following my public concerns and questions in January, Raphael was the front man going on podcasts and Twitter and stuff, trying to dispel any concerns. And now he's the enemy of Swan. So it's interesting how 8 months can change things. But try and look at these things with an open mind and make your own conclusions.
Cosign. BTCPay Server released a case study on the two conferences, Nostr Riga and Baltic Honey Badger. They did 27,582 euro in Bitcoin revenue from 2,998 Lightning Network payments during the Riga Bitcoin week. I was there. I probably made, I'll say 10 of those transactions. 10 of those about 3,000.
It's pretty cool that the Nostr event which wasn't all Bitcoiners, almost went toe-to-toe with the actual Bitcoin conference that followed. I think, if I recall correctly, the hodl. By the way, people asking the sweatshirt I'm wearing, the logo is hodl. It was a gift from my good friends. Over there.
Max.
Yeah, they're amazing. It's just a really great company. That 1031 is investors in, but we invested in them because they're a great company. It's not the reverse. But one thing to keep in mind with the Nostr event, which I thought was pretty cool, is that everyone, like your badge that was indicated that you were a ticket holder and that you were allowed to be at the event, was also a Bolt card that had preloaded $21 worth of Bitcoin on it. So you could go and then you could go spend that Bitcoin at the different vendors and merchants, everywhere except a Bitcoin around the event. So that probably helped for it. I mean, it was really cool. First of all, who doesn't like free money? But second of all, like just tapping to pay on those little Android terminals that BTCPay has is just a really great UX.
It is. I mean, learning from the Trump transaction that many people had comments on, particularly around the UX and the speed, I think that is something that people should take to heart. And like you mentioned, the NFC tap to pay UX is just something that people are incredibly familiar with, especially as tap to pay becomes more widely accepted. Cooper's barbecue down the street. I'm gonna admit, hand up, I'm an Apple Pay tap to pay guy. I like it. I keep my I don't bring my wallet with me that many places anymore.
Dude, when you use Apple Pay, you realize like, fuck, man, like we need to do so much more work on Bitcoin UX. But I mean, it's also unfair because Apple has historically locked it down. I think they might have opened it up.
They're opening up the secure enclaves to developers to use.
Like, I mean, like historically, like Zeus, for instance, or whatever, couldn't enable tap to pay from an iPhone. I think they might be able to now, but I don't think it's still a feature yet. But yeah, like that UX is amazing. Also, Apple Pay works offline, which is incredibly useful. Yanni Nicole in the YouTube comments is calling out my American privilege. It was 21 euros that they loaded on the cards. Yeah, that makes more sense considering they weren't in America. It was not $21. But yeah. The tap to pay UX.
Tap to pay. Like anybody building Bitcoin apps, payment apps specifically, like focus on tap to pay, NFC.
Yeah, and I prefer tap to pay from a phone because then you can see like the information of the transaction. Like one of the issues I have with the Bolt card is like you can set permissions and stuff, but like on total amount that can be pulled from the card. But because there's no screen or anything, it's just a dumb card. You don't know if they didn't just like drain your whole wallet when you tap it. Like no one did that, but
you need a screen.
All it takes is one malicious merchant, and then like you like go home later, or you like not checking your balance, and you don't realize, and it's just all, it's all gone.
We'll say, shout out to Cooper's down the street on 3rd and Congress here in Austin, Texas. It must have been the last month or two. You can finally use tap to pay there. For the longest time, I'd go, realize I didn't have my wallet, and have to go somewhere else because I didn't have my wallet on me and couldn't use tap to pay. But now I don't have that problem. We went and got Cooper's yesterday.
I mean, freaks, like use cash until they ban it if you can, and then ideally use Bitcoin when possible. But yeah, the convenience cannot be beat. I will say that, first of all, everyone should read this case study. I think BTCPay does great case studies. BTCPay also like built out, so BTCPay is a completely open source project. They have like a whole backend for managing these Bolt cards, which is quite fascinating and powerful. And so like one example here, if you're thinking about using this for your events, is like they loaded up everyone with 21 euros worth of Bitcoin. But at the end of the event, like whatever wasn't spent, they pulled back, which gives you the option of, like no one wants to just like see Bitcoin just like disappear into thin air for like a 2-day event because there was presumably a lot of people that didn't use it, right? So it just gives the event operator a lot of flexibility in this type of situation. But you can also imagine it in like a family situation. Right, where it's like, okay, I'm going to give my kids
some arcade money,
and then like if they lose it or something, I can just remove the money from the card.
Damn it! I will say, and if you do go to one of these events with these tap to pay cards, what is it? It uses LNURL withdrawal or LNURL push, one of the two. Download Zeus wallet so you can actually use NFC to swipe the sats to your own wallet. Gonna hand up. And up, I'm a humble sat stacker too. If they're gonna give me
Did
free
you do that?
sats,
Did you
yeah,
pull the remainder off at the end?
yeah, yeah.
I ran out. I love spending Bitcoin. I mean, I ran out of my 21 euros pretty quickly. First of all, it's huge. We got yellow actually in the Nostr chat. That's great. That's great to see.
Welcome, yellow. Don't clip that, yellow. God damn it. It's not as bad as Snotty Bent. Snotty Bent, I don't think will ever be topped. No, I just
There's
jinxed
plenty
myself.
of good material out there.
All right. Next up on the list, we've got PayPal enabling business accounts to buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrency, and also withdraw to a wallet of your choice. So this is pretty massive. Everybody, I think, thought with Block and Square were going to be the first to implement this, but PayPal beating them to the punch. This happened 2 days ago.
No, I mean, I think Square has the feature where a merchant can choose a percentage of revenue, and as that gets paid, it automatically stacks Bitcoin with it.
Yes, PayPal did not implement that.
One thing to keep in mind here, and like I originally read this press release with my massive skeptic hat on because fuck PayPal, but the main reason I included it is because the merchant can then actually withdraw to self-custody and not trust PayPal, which they absolutely should do. Like in the scheme of different custody trade-offs, having PayPal custody your Bitcoin is, first of all, not your Bitcoin, it's an IOU, and second of all, probably the most retarded thing you can do. Like, you shouldn't do that. You'll probably lose your money. They have a long history of freezing accounts and closing accounts and stealing people's money. So if you do this program, withdraw frequently and often, ideally to cold storage. And if you're not comfortable with that, like, get comfortable with it slow and steady, and then make it a reality. It's easier than you think. Humanity relies on the raising of children, which is the most difficult personal responsibility thing ever, but somehow this species survives. If you can raise a child, I think you can very easily self-custody Bitcoin.
It's not that hard, freaks. It's not that hard. I mean, props where props are due. PayPal letting you take self-custody. If you're a PayPal business buying Bitcoin, make sure you're sweeping your sats to self-custody.
Shout out Mushashi718 in the Nostr chat. Zapped us 21,000 sats. 2 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoins. Missed those debates.
I'm a Bitcoin's maximalist. I like Bitcoins.
The debate still exists. Like, Marty's wrong. Like, we just don't argue about it in public that much because it's like we've both dug our heels in, and we're never gonna. I don't think we'll ever agree on this issue. Like, the plural of Bitcoin is clearly Bitcoin, but
I think it's each their own.
Marty's welcome to have the wrong opinion.
I like my Bitcoins. You like your singular Bitcoin. It's okay. Moving on. Telegram changes policy to share phone numbers and IP addresses with valid request. Obviously, Telegram has a lot of pressure on them from global regulators and governments, as is evidenced by the fact that their founder and CEO was arrested in France last month. And so it looks like they're bending the knee a bit and opening up an avenue to share information.
This is like
on their
the
users.
most obvious thing ever. Like, of course, this is what happened. I think this is exactly what we called was going to happen when he was arrested. I mean, you throw a gun to the guy's head, and he either has his life ruined or he complies. This is the problem with relying on centralized platforms in general. There's a centralized point of failure that can be pressured, and it doesn't matter whether you agree with the morals and objectives of the person in charge, or if you think they're trustworthy or not. They're a single point of failure that can easily get pressured into complying with surveillance and other different anti-human policies. I think this is also another perfect example of why, if you are a freedom-focused individual and you want to provide freedom-focused software and services, it's incredibly important that you reduce the reliance on yourself as much as possible, even if it's not fully decentralized. And one way of doing that is by providing very strong privacy guarantees to users so that you don't have much information to hand over. We've seen Signal practice this. I mean, they're technically a nonprofit. Proton has also tried to limit the amount of information they have on users for those situations where they inevitably get pressured. There's been many cases of this, and it's foolish and reckless and dangerous for your users if you do otherwise.
Beware, freaks, beware. Expected. Happened rather quickly.
Yellow, first of all, you're not zapping enough. And second of all, the plural of sats is sats, but the plural of Bitcoin is Bitcoin. These are two different things.
The plural of sat is sats.
Yeah. He's trying to get me with a gotcha in the Nostr comment saying.
He got you.
We don't say stay humble and stack sat.
But if you want to stack sat, one sat at a time, you can.
I'm glad we're arguing about the important things again. I missed it.
Speaking of important things, we're into the grant section of the episode. OpenSats distributes the 7th wave of Bitcoin grants to
Just
Kyoto, Minibits, DLC Dev Kit, Cove, Nutmix, Asmat, Floresta, and Assume UTXO and BCA.
We're incredibly proud to support all these projects. My favorite thing is when we announce these things and like there's always like the reply guy like, why are you funding this? Why aren't you funding that? It's like, why don't you be the fucking change you want to see in the world and fund those things then? I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done at OpenSats, and we're just going to keep shipping grants. And you can't stop us. And huge shout out to all the donors that make this possible, because without you, we can't ship grants. Period. We can't do what we do. So thank you.
Yeah, and you guys OpenSats gave out long-term support for John Attack. I love to see this, John.
Dude's a fucking legend.
He is a legend.
I've been working on Bitcoin.
Very under the radar for the longest time. He was sort of running the review process and doing reviews. He's still doing that, also working on the BIPs as well. And so, I mean, this is an individual who I would put at the top of the list of somebody that deserves long-term support. So thank you, Matt OpenSats, for giving this to John. He's an incredible asset to the Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah, what was cool about this one is, so we do have a limit on the amount that we provide in long-term support grants. And so just to rehash, like a long-term support grant is a 2-year grant denominated in fiat yearly and paid out monthly in Bitcoin so that people have a reasonable expectation, our strong developers and open source contributors that this movement relies on have a expectation of what kind of cash flow they'll have so that they can pay rent and support their families and quit their debt, their horrible fiat jobs supporting the dystopia. But we do have a limit. We have a cap. I think it's a pretty generous cap, but we do have a cap that is not publicly stated because I think otherwise then everyone is just going to try and apply for the cap. Some people apply for less on the LTS. But anyway, in this case, Arthur Hayes's family office, Maelstrom, which we've discussed in the past, is also providing a long-term grant to John alongside of us. And both of us were aware, both organizations were aware of this when the grants were approved. And it's actually kind of, I think it's pretty cool. Like this is not the first time we've done something like this. We've done it a lot with HRF in the past. And it's kind of cool because it also means that for whatever reason, like I think OpenSats is going to be a multi-generational force of good for the world and change. But for whatever reason, like if there's mismanagement at OpenSats or HRF or Maelstrom, developers that are able to have sources from two sources, they've distributed that risk a decent amount, right? It's like if for some reason Maelstrom disappears and stops paying out John's grant, he's still getting a portion from us and vice versa, which I think is pretty cool.
Some would say robust, resilient. Words to describe this. Shout out to John. Shout out to OpenSats. Shout out to Maelstrom. Earnestly, John, thank you for all you've done throughout the years. He's been one of the most hardcore, and he does the stuff that nobody wants to do, which is some of the most important stuff.
Yeah, dude's a fucking legend. I'm very grateful he's working on Bitcoin, and I'm proud that we're supporting him.
OpenSats, 7th wave of Nostr grants released as well.
Keep shipping.
Nostr Arduino? How would you say this? Arduino. Nostr Arduino. Come on.
No, that's like they didn't create that name. That's an established platform.
It's an open source library that allows Arduino microcontrollers to use the Nostr protocol. Yeah. All right, important work.
It's like the Nostr project's fault. It's like the open Internet of Things hardware stuff. It's like a specific.
And as we've learned the last couple of weeks, we need a more secure Internet of Things. No one thing's blowing up. White Noise also funded Future. I see what you're doing here, Future. I don't know. I'll give this one a C.
Not a great name. Once again, we don't fund based on names. Otherwise, a lot of projects would not get funded.
NoteDeck, great name. Easy to read.
I'm really excited about NoteDeck. Are you aware of NoteDeck?
I am not.
So NoteDeck is JB55 Will of Damas. And the goal is a multi-platform.
This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for.
And it's going to be way better than TweetDeck.
X fucked up TweetDeck so bad.
Yeah. This is true.
Bad. It was true. Talking about like news cycles, like that was my portal into the Matrix for the better part of a decade, and they just ruined it.
Yeah, I'm many such cases. I'm really excited for NoteDeck, and I'm really excited that we live in a world now where instead of complaining to the centralized powers that be that just keep making things worse and worse, we're just going to build the future we want to see. Nobody can stop us.
Agreed. And the last grant that went out in the 7th wave of Nostr grants from OpenSats is the Key Stash, a place to stash your Nostr keys.
What do you think of this name?
I don't know why you had to like do the double, like you had to, why not, don't get cute and make it look like a mustache, just Key Stash with an SH.
Yeah, it's I kind of like the name, but it's really confusing because it's spelled like mustache, not like stash, which is what you would think it is. But yeah, this is like, so Amber exists on Android, right? Where you keep your Nostr key in Amber, and then that way you don't have to put your Nostr private key in all the different Nostr apps you use on your phone. It just auths through Amber. This is like that, but on desktop. So I think it's an important project. I'm very happy to support it.
This is cool to see in the Nostr live chat. Currently, we're working on a BIP for a new quantum-resistant address type called P2QRH and a hypothetical soft fork called Qubit. Who knows? The quantum question of what happens if quantum computing comes, they could break all the Bitcoin private keys. It comes up. It's one of the oldest and most trotted out forms of FUD, but isn't libsec P256K1 quantum resistant already? Am I understanding that correctly? Any of the chats can answer that. I thought that was the case, that the cryptographic library that most the Bitcoin Core uses specifically already sort of has quantum resistant either fallback plans or is already out of the box quantum resistant. Could be wrong, but I should be imagining that. But
I
I'm
think
pretty sure I've heard that before.
Pablo nailed it. There's always money in the quantum stand. All this shit's a little bit above my pay grade, but also I'm not very concerned.
Neither am I. All right, we're on to the HRF section of the show. It's coming out of Iran this week. Physical and financial repression of women intensifies. The Iranian regime is intensifying its repression of women and girls after the murder of Masha Amini, a 22-year-old woman arrested for noncompliance with Iran's mandatory hijab laws. 2 years ago, her killing sparked nationwide protests, to which the regime responded with increased surveillance through artificial intelligence and drones, violence, and even death sentences for women activists, as reported by the United Nations. Beyond physical repression, the regime uses financial control, imposing fines and restricting access to education, jobs, and travel against women who defy hijab regulations. These financial penalties deepen women's dependence on the state, preventing them from fully participating in the economy and stripping them of fundamental rights. Go to financialfreedomreport.org, sign up for the weekly newsletter where you can read more stories like this one about financial repression and human rights violations by despotic regimes. And I think this one particularly highlights the importance of Bitcoin, a monetary system and protocol that exist outside of the purview, maybe not the purview, but outside the control of governments and central authorities.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very brutal topic, but I think it's important to highlight because it just shows how much is at stake for people around the world, and how important these tools are, and that how incredibly important it is that they're easy to use, that they have reasonable defaults, that they don't put users at risk, unknowing risk. But like, this is why Freedom Tech exists. This is why the movement is so important, is because we have to empower individuals around the world that are being like crushed. They're being crushed by governments that ultimately just want control over their populace.
Yes. This is why we Bitcoin freaks.
And Nostr. Just
And
Freedom
Nostr.
Tech in general. On the quantum thing, by the way, I'm almost done with this trilogy. Nexus. The Nexus trilogy. I forget who the author is. Nexus trilogy. You guys know I'm just like, I like sci-fi, especially like near-term sci-fi. Ramez Nam. It's thought-provoking. These sci-fi guys, like, especially when they hit things that like you actually know about, they push it a little bit, but it gets your mind thinking. I recommend this read. I think it's a good read. It's all about like brain enhancements, quantum stuff like that. And it's like set in like, I think like 2050, 2060, which is like, I like that time range.
Like post Mandibles rebuilding stage.
Well, Mandibles is like kind of in that time range too, right? Like Mandibles is like 2030 to like 2060, and this is like 2040 to like 2090. But it's good, especially when you have like your Nostr Bitcoin lens on. I think like our people would appreciate this book more than others. Trilogy. I'm on the third.
Go pick it up, freaks. Before we get to the software section of the show, we do have to talk about the top 4 boost from Rabbit Hole Recap. 323 Palindrome RIP. Pal pumps the coin. Top boost from last week from Foisey, 55,555 sats. 5s across the board. Palindrome boost. Bitcoin Billiards. Stop by and shoot some pool. I love pool. Deep Eddies here in Austin. Incredible
Pool's
bar.
good.
Great pool bar. Cheap beers.
Like, is billiards and pool just like it's the same thing, right?
Interchangeable. Yeah. Deep Eddies, natural light on tap. You can get like a $6 pitcher of natural light. It's incredible. It brings you back. Great jukebox.
I'm not very good though. I enjoy it, but I'm not very. I'm better than most. My wife gets mad at me because I always compare myself to like averages, like a standardized test. Like I'm probably like in the 95th percentile on pool, but I get crushed.
Probably slightly right of the concentration of the bell curve. Like definitely not right tail, but
You got to realize that most people suck at pool.
yeah.
Like they're really bad, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. Have a drink, place a little bit of humble bets. Everyone knows I like my humble bets. Put
Yeah.
some money on the line.
If you suck or if you're good at billiards or pool, whatever you refer to it as, Sunday, September 29th, so that is this Sunday, from 2 to 5 p.m. at Surge Coffee Bar and Billiards, 3241 West Montrose Ave in Chicago, Illinois, Albany Park. It's great to see. I think I've actually been. Yeah, I think I've been to Surge Coffee Bar and Billiards, Chicago, putting it on. Hosting different monthly meetups. Thanks, Matt and Marty, for everything you do. Buy Phoenix Ammo. Great advice.
Oh, Phoenix. Phoenix is awesome. I've
FENIX for anybody out there, not PH.
yeah.
FE.
Another bad name. I had him on Civil Dispatch. The dude is fucking. He's a riot, and he cares. He cares. He's a uh, humble American manufacturer of ammo, and he doesn't sell to police or military. He only sells to individuals, and he accepts Bitcoin with BTCPay Server. Super high quality ammo, and I mean, if you haven't listened to the Citadel Dispatch, like listen to the Citadel Dispatch, and then you'll probably never buy ammo from anyone else. Um, he's awesome.
And Foisey, if you live in Cook County, just be careful. Okay. At Gunson, 54,321 sats. 54321. All that talk about exploding devices, I was surprised Matt didn't mention the brain frying chips from Mandibles, best politics podcast out there. Thank you. We try.
Yeah, there you go.
The
Yeah,
brain
I mean,
frying chips from
Mandible,
Mandibles is my favorite part. Like that
you
really.
didn't read Mandible, but she did. You know, she got some things wrong. She thought Bitcoin was going to fail, but she hit a lot of things. She hit a lot of things.
She had Neuralink in there.
Yeah, I. Did you see the new Facebook glasses?
Are they like Ray? Is it the Ray-Bans? What are they?
No, they're like what Apple came out with their goggles, except they're only in sunglass form, and like they're actually like lightweight and doesn't have you don't have like a cable attached to it. It's like they look like shitty glasses, but they're closer to glasses than goggles. Um, and they also announced, first of all, Zuckerberg was wearing like a ridiculous T-shirt that referenced himself on it.
Nice.
But now he's like this cool guy, this buff cool guy. But he also announced auto translation for Instagram, which I posted on Nostr without comment, mostly because I just thought it was something that people should engage with and see, and I was curious on people's comments. I didn't want to jade the responses. But I think what it highlights is Facebook is shipping stuff that is like very convenient, very appealing to people, and obviously incredibly dystopian. And that makes our job a lot more difficult, like on the freedom tech side. And it goes to what we were talking about Apple Pay, right? You can't have just complete blinders on what they're pushing the sheep into. Like you have to be aware of what the competition is. So good.
I wanted to pull this up. I saw somebody reposted this Ram Capital tweet from January. You know what's amazing? They're not that noticeable on your face.
Marty had Logan pull up the Apple Vision goggles. But yeah,
Makes it harder.
Yeah, so like they had this auto translate feature, which obviously is already possible, but to have it like built into Instagram, where if you put a video on Instagram, it can auto translate into everyone's local language and does the lips like naturally move with it, is obviously going to be incredibly appealing to content creators, right? And if you want them to move to Nostr not just for the freedom, then we need to have freedom focused things, whether that's DVM powered or something like that can compete with that on a decent level. Otherwise, it feels like we're constantly on the back foot, right? And like I want to be on the offensive. I want to be. I want to be better than the competition.
Yeah, in startup terms, this would be called feature parity, is what Nostr needs to get to there.
But Logan, pull up the Zuck glasses. I forget what he called Orion. He called them. By the way, I haven't used any Facebook products for over a decade, but the glasses, like, I think they're going to get pretty big uptake on them. Like, this is way more than these fucking Apple goggles that are ridiculous. They're just huge on your face. Okay, you can keep reading the boost. Here's the glasses. See it, but like they look ridiculous, but not when you compare them to the Apple goggles. You see them, Marty?
Yeah. No, I just want to like. It is.
Got
it
that
is going to be.
Wrist thing. You wear the wrist thing, so like you use your fingers to navigate with the wrist controller. Like you don't have a controller in your hand. It's actually like around your wrist. Yeah, no one's going to play the ping pong game. That's stupid. But there's going to be a lot of people walking around with these fucking glasses. And they all have cameras pointed outwards. So it's like they're not just making a decision for themselves. When your neighbor gets a Ring camera, they're not just making a decision for themselves. They're surveilling your street. When your neighbor gets a Tesla, they're not just making a decision for yourself. They're driving around with internet-connected cameras everywhere. And when your coworker gets to be clear, no one at OpenSats or 1031 will ever wear these glasses. But when your coworker gets these glasses and is walking around with them, then there's a Facebook surveillance camera just sitting in the cubicle next to you.
Yeah, the Tesla thing is very like it's been like the Tesla thing is very misunderstood. Not even misunderstood. Just people just don't understand. I mean, I'm in Austin, Texas, the mecca of Tesla cars. I feel like you go down my block, I think there's at least 10 or 20 Teslas. Like on our street, if you go down 4 blocks, there's probably literally 20 Teslas, and they're all just surveilling you because they have even when they're off, they have that setting where it's essentially like a Ring camera that's recording everything.
Dude, the Ring cameras are so bad. So many people have the Ring cameras. There's like whole communities that are just surveilled by Amazon, and people paid for it and installed it themselves. That's the crazy thing. Like 1984 wasn't dystopian enough.
Well, I'll white pill here. I was actually talking to Will Cole earlier this week, and I think the ability to easily spin up apps with AI companion development tools is going to be a boon for sovereign security systems. He was describing how somebody in his life used a combination of Whisper, Cursor, and Claude 3.5 to essentially replace their Nest system with their own secure surveillance system within their house. Like, he just built a database and an app from scratch using that, and was able to basically use his own cameras and host his own data pretty trivially. That's the thing. These things are double-edged swords. Going back to like the translation, like that's massive. That would be, if we're being honest, massively beneficial for this show. Like, think of the untapped audience we have in parts of the world that are not as fluent in English as many Western countries are. Like, it would be great to be able to get exposure and help educate those people and turn them into freaks as well. But I think there are ways to ensure that we don't get pushed down the dystopian path, and we do have the tools to compete in terms of speed to market and quality of product. And so there is a way. It's just going to take action and actually doing it. It was actually very encouraging when Will was describing the story to me earlier this week. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, freedom tech is hope. That's the way, Bill.
Yeah. Back to, we have one more boost that we have to mention, and that comes from, actually 2 more boosts. Eric99, 50,000 sats. Stay humble, stack sats.
Great advice. Thank you, Eric. You're a true ride or die.
And then OK Sharp, 33,333 sats. 3s across the board. Palindrome boost. Only 4 weeks until plan ATL, otherwise known as TabConf. The Atlanta Bitcoin Conference, October 23rd to 26th. Meet and hear from shadowy supercoder devs, a technical Bitcoin conference that is pleb-friendly. Peace and love. Stay humble, stack sats. Thank you, OK Sharp. Get down to TabConf if you can.
TabConf is awesome. Great conference. One of the best conferences.
4 weeks away, freaks. 4 weeks away. Back to the list. Software updates. Starting with, God, the Signal. Got to reopen it. Wasabi Wallet version 2.2.0. Taproot receive addresses, free coordinators, and more. That's good to see.
Yeah, so following the Samurai arrest, Wasabi shut down their for-profit company and their for-profit coordinator and moved to a model where anyone could run a coordinator and users could choose which CoinJoin coordinator they wanted to use. And just a reminder, the similarities between the coordinator on Samurai and Wasabi are that the coordinator does not take custody of funds. It simply coordinates these signed messages that are going back and forth to each other to construct these multi-party transactions, multiple people sending a transaction at the same time to achieve privacy benefits. So they opened it up to the community so the community could run CoinJoin coordinators. And there was a bunch of different coordinators that popped up. Some of them were charging fees. But quickly the liquidity went to the one that wasn't charging fees, the main one that wasn't charging fees by an open source contributor called Crew, who hasn't liked me in the past, but I have respect for him, and it's good to see an individual stepping up to the plate and running one of these coordinators, because most people would not do that. So the largest coordinator by liquidity is this one coordinator that is free. And there's been some malicious coordinators that have been using the fee taking mechanism where you pay a coordinator a fee to try and rob people, take a higher fee than was expected. So this most recent update to Wasabi just makes it so that you can't choose a non-free coordinator. Hopefully there'll be multiple free coordinators. There are right now multiple free coordinators, and users can choose which one. But the default is that just no one's going to be taking a fee from these CoinJoin transactions.
Great to see. Shout out to Wasabi Wallet. Keep pushing. Next up on the list, we have Ashigaru, version 1.0.0. It's a privacy-first mobile Bitcoin wallet.
So this is actually a full-on fork of Samurai's open source code base, with the major caveat, which it's surprising it's taken this long. But it gives you pretty much everything that Samurai offered. I don't think they have Whirlpool enabled yet.
I think you have to run your own dojo too, right?
Yeah. The key difference is they are not supporting the light wallet mode, where historically on Samurai, users, if they weren't using their own node, they could use Samurai's node. In this case, you have to run your own node. In Samurai's case, in Ashigaru's case, I guess now, that stack is called Dojo. So you'd have to run your own Dojo backend, or a family or friend would have to run a Dojo backend that you connect to use this.
Great to see. Shout out to the Ashigaru team. Kibo.money, Satonomics version 0.4.0 has been released.
This is a pretty cool project. It's basically open source Glassnode that you can self-host. So Glassnode, people always see the engagement tweets where people are like, look, this is the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges. It's gone down or it's gone up, or like whales are doing this or whales are doing that. Historically, that's been closed source, proprietary through services like Glassnode. You'd have to pay them a lot of money to access it. With this tool, you can self-host it and use it with your own node in a completely open source way.
Yes.
Great to see.
The node has been removed with only Rust as the project's dependency. Easier self-hosting. And you can support the project. If you go to the No Bullshit Bitcoin link in the show notes, they have a page where you can go support the project there. Sounds like a good grant nominee. Kiba. Think about it.
OpenStats.org/apply.
Core Lightning version 24.08.1 has been released with crash and bug fixes. You don't have it on the list, but I think we should mention it. Logan, if you can go to Nifty Nay's.
Oh, the Illuminati meeting.
Not the Illuminati meeting. Nifty Nay's Twitter account. I don't think I'll find the tweet, but Bolt 11 has officially been implemented or integrated into the Lightning spec. Long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm joking, but it
Bolt 12, excuse me.
This happened at the Lightning dev meeting.
Well, that's good. I mean, this is good to see because this has been the big fight with Bolt 12. Sorry for.
Twitter's been taking forever to load today, and Nostr's fine.
Same.
Nice.
I just sent you a link in Signal. But Core Lightning tweeted out in a monumental moment, Bolt 12 originally proposed by
the X loading screen.
Rusty Twit in 2020 and pioneered on Core Lightning has officially been merged into the Lightning Network spec. Let's celebrate Bolt 12, simplifying Lightning payment interactions and improving privacy.
Okay, now pull up the Nostr link. Sorry.
This is monumental, and
It's
I mean,
deal.
joking about the big problem with getting Bolt 12 across the line is that there's been some inter-cabal or inter-implementation squabbling about getting it in, and it's good to see.
No, that is probably your best usage of that term yet.
It's good to see that
we need multiple implementations to push it forward in an actual usable way. Specifically, L&D has a significantly large share of the node market. So to have them not on board, they weren't treating it as a priority, really delayed adoption in a big way. So really good to see progress happen here. And as is the case, like I made a joke about the Illuminati meeting. At the end of the day, with open source software, you have a choice if you want to run things or not. It is much easier to have productive conversations in person than have like keyboard warriors and
like shedding, as people like to say.
So that should be 100% encouraged to have in-person, intimate conversations and getting to know each other, because it results in a lot more progress in that way. People, the bridges get made. People come together and treat each other as fellow humans, rather than what we often see on the internet, which is keyboard warriors and gotchas and shit talking. But then at the end of the day, the key thing to stop that from getting corrupted is open source software. It doesn't auto update. You choose if you want to run it or not. And that there's no high priests in Bitcoin. Don't just blindly follow people. Make your own decisions.
Agreed.
I think X is still loading in the background.
We've got a lot of people in the live streams, cross-app.stream, YouTube, Twitter. And so if you're new, what is Bolt 12? Bolt 12 is a significant improvement to spending Bitcoin privately on the Lightning Network, and a significant UX improvement as well that would allow you to present static invoices instead of having to produce an invoice per payment that you want to receive. And so the fact that this is getting implemented into the official Lightning Network spec is a good step forward for privacy and UX on the Lightning Network.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even. There are some privacy benefits, but like the key thing here is reusable payment codes. This idea that I can give you an invoice and you can just pay it as much as you want. Like I can just have a static string of text that I can put you can put it in your social media bio, you can put it in an email signature, you can put it at the bottom of an invoice, and anyone can pay you on Lightning at any time without you having to run an always on, separate web server to deliver invoices that expire that are only payable once. Huge UX improvement.
Love to see it. Better UX. Crux version 24.09.0 has been released.
So this is a really cool project. It's a project that enables you to build your own hardware signing device. It has a security focus. Seems really promising, and we are supporting it via OpenSats.
Hell yeah. Haven Relay version 0.2.2 has been released.
So this is the maintainer of this is Ride or Die Freak, good friend and absolute legend UTXO. And he's just diving deep into this idea of smart Nostr relays that do different things. And it's just very promising. There's a lot of things. His mind's moving really fast. He just keeps shipping. And Haven specifically is this idea of 4 relays in one, to be like the ideal personal sovereign relay stack. If someone wants to get the most freedom out of Nostr and the most flexibility out of Nostr. So it's, one set of commands results in 4 different relays that do different things and have different rule sets. Just really great to see. So if you're trying to use Nostr in a more freedom-focused way, definitely check out Haven.
Check out Haven. And then 2 more software updates. First one, Damus version 1.10.1 has been released. So the new Damus App Store version just dropped. Support for viewing highlights and a way to create highlights in the Safari share sheet. Push notification powered by our new Nostr push notification server, Note Push. More obvious friend filter for reducing spam and notifications and DMs, which is important, and improved reconnection speed.
The push notifications is a big deal, where it works quite well now. I will say that you should just not have push notifications enabled on any of your social media if you're using social media other than Nostr, but also Nostr. It's a practice that I've preached for years now, and it's just much better for your mental health not to have push notifications, but it works really well. And as Marty said earlier, it's important to have feature parity with a lot of the competitors out there. The improved connection speed he has is just like a single byline, like a single line item. It's much faster. Like, I forget what the exact, he like posted a note. He's like, oh fuck, like I messed something up. And it's like doing duplicate connections or something like that makes Damus slower. And then he fixed it and he's like, holy shit, it's way faster. And that is true. So it's a big update. JB55 keeps shipping. Just absolutely love to see it.
Shout out to you, Will. Shout out to everybody contributing to Damus. And last but not least, talking about UX, Strike's add privacy shake feature. We were laughing about this before we came on. I was just saying, I demoed it to my wife this morning. I was just like a kid in a candy. Look at this, babe. She's like, cool.
It like seems kind of stupid on the surface, but it's incredibly satisfying. And it is a feature that is an important feature to have. People desire to hide your balances on like bank apps and Bitcoin wallets, Bitcoin apps. If you're like showing it to a friend or something, and you don't want them to see how much you have on Strike. I will say, if you're self-conscious about how much you have on Strike, you should probably withdraw it to self-custody. The only real proof of reserves is self-custody. I know for a fact Strike is running an incredibly responsible ship, probably the most responsible ship in terms of Bitcoin custodial wallets, but you should not keep more than you're willing to lose on any custodial wallet. And the only true proof of reserves is to withdraw. So if you are feeling self-conscious, you shouldn't do that. You should self-custody. But yeah, incredibly satisfying feature. It was from a user request on Twitter, which I thought was cool, that they just like this user requested it, and within a few weeks they shipped the feature, which is awesome.
Look at the price on that demo picture.
What's the price? I can't
see. 42.
Nice. So they've been working on it for a little bit. I was joking to Marty that like I think it'd be funny if there was a shake to stack feature where you're just like, if you shake your phone, it just fills up with sats. But that could also be very dangerous.
Could be. You just be drunk, like charging yourself with Bitcoin.
Just leave it on in your pocket and just go for a run.
That is it for the software updates of the section. Matt wanted to push macro talk to the end, which I think is a good idea. I've only got two things I want to bring up. One about the state of the U.S. economy, and I think this is just a good qualitative indicator, which is the fact that a record number of Americans, 87%, believe it's a bad time to buy a home, more than double the sentiment during the 2008 crisis and even higher in the 1980s when interest rates peaked at 18%. So despite what the incumbent administration and economists may want you to believe, particularly that the economy is doing well and good, that we have recovered, and that we have inflation tamed, the American consumer is saying otherwise. Almost 90% of Americans think it's a bad time to buy a house. Real estate's cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how many Americans can afford to buy a house.
Yeah, probably not many. That's probably why 90% think it's a bad time, because they can't afford it, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other macro talk coming out of China. China, notoriously opaque, black box, hard to know what's going on there, but they made some big moves this week. There's been reports of a cascading real estate crisis over in China for the better part of a year now, and real estate, if you're unaware, is where the Chinese store a lot of their wealth, particularly middle-class Chinese. And so it's gotten to the point where the bank, People's Bank of China, has had to step in. So they're doing reverse repo rate cuts. They're doing a mortgage rate cut for existing loans. They're boosting lending to consumers and corporates. They're going to fund brokers to buy stocks. They've also made it illegal to short stocks in China. And they're going to give more bank loans to support stock buybacks for corporations. And then after this was released, I believe Wednesday, and then yesterday they came out, and I think they said hundreds of billions of dollars of stimulus that they're going to put into the economy. Again, opaque black box. I did see a take this morning where somebody who likes to think of themselves as a China expert is saying they're actually getting rid of their dollars. They're using this as a way to de-dollarize. I don't know what's going on exactly.
Someone who thinks of themselves as a China expert is a great bio.
Let me see exactly what he said. I bookmarked that tweet.
I mean, China's pumping the coin.
Yeah, we have pumped this week, and could be because of China. Could be because the rates are lower here in the U.S. It seems like the money printers are going on globally. Here's a take from Nostr, House of Gold. China is not printing yuan. They are spending dollars from their reserves for the stimulus. China is de-dollarizing while simultaneously stimulating their markets. Genius move. So that's a take there. Anyway, it's stimulative. So more money into the system has historically been good for Bitcoin. It seems like money printers are going brr around the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think governments are backed up against the wall. Like Yellen came out, was it this week that she came out and she said,
yeah, and she tried to,
we need to keep rates low because we have our interest payments on our debt is way too high.
Yeah, and I believe somebody pressed her, like, isn't this going to send the national debt parabolic? And she said yes, but she did it. She did it, yes, but don't worry, it's not that bad. So
yeah, they're backed up against the wall. They have no choice. And fortunately, we as individuals do have a choice, and we can opt out of the craziness with Bitcoin and protect ourselves.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for joining us this week.
We just got
Not wrapping up. Just wanted to.
Who raid from the Grinder? Thank you, Grinder.
From the app.
No.
Welcome to
Grinder is the app, the gay dating app.
Welcome to our gay freaks.
The Grinder is a ride or die freak that also streams on Zapstream, and he ended his stream, so he sent his audience over here, which is really cool. What was I going to say? Oh, I'm curious, Marty, on your opinion about two politics things. Since we're a politics podcast now. What's your opinion on Trump saying that he doesn't want to do another debate?
I think strategically it makes sense. They're narrative around the first debate on ABC immediately after was that Kamala had won, but if you've looked at the polls, and who knows how much we can trust the polls, so just it seems like Trump is trusting the polls. Like he got a big bump from that, particularly because she just gave empty comments on the most important topics, particularly immigration and the economy. And I guess he's taking those poll numbers and saying I've nothing to gain and a lot to lose if I do another one.
Yeah, but like, what about the precedent of just like, I know it's all like, it just makes it seem like even more of a scam than it all already was. Precedent of just not like, you're going to be the president of the United States and you're only going to have one debate with your competitor.
Well, I mean, his argument is like, I've already done 2 debates, one with the previous competitor
But
and
even
the next
two,
competitor.
even 2 is less than usual, right?
I don't know. I think it's usually 2 to 3, depending on the particular election. But
And is there going to be a VP debate? Usually, there's at least one VP debate, and I think there's usually 3 presidential debates. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, freaks.
I could be. I'm not a.
It's like the Dems, like neither party basically had a primary this year. There's like no debates. It just feels even more of a scam than usual. Like, you're going to be the president of the United States. Like, he should be, if he believes that he's going to be the best president of the United States, he should just kick her ass in the debates. Like, it's a weak move, right? Like, it's lame.
No, I'll take the other side of this. Like,
well, you're actually taking the other side of it. We're actually having a debate about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to dig into like politics and get into politics talk, like that's the rub on the Republicans compared to the Democrats. Like, is that the Democrats play to win and the Republicans haven't historically, and I think this is a move contrarian to that. Yeah, I mean, like Democrats play to win. The
Republicans in my lifetime, the Republicans are the winners. The Democrats are always just like.
I think you're sorely mistaken there. I mean, just look at the White House across our lives. We were born in the tail end of Bush 1, Clinton for 8 years, Bush 2.
I mean, look at this.
Obama.
Look at state houses and local politics. It's like all Republican.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a different layer. We're talking a different layer here.
Okay,
that's a different game. I don't know. I think again,
I think if you're playing to win, you don't put Harris as your candidate, but whatever.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
I've never heard that. I always thought that the Republicans always had more savvy with this type of stuff. I mean, what about like the Supreme Court justices? They got like Obama and everything. Like, oh, we got to play by the rules. We got to do all these things. And then
again, different things.
Got all the Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
But what about like every time there's like a sexual harassment thing, the Democrats are like, oh, you have to step down, and they all like just destroy their own party member. But on the Republican side, they're like, just ignore it and it'll go away in 4 weeks.
To be clear, play to win, particularly around elections, and whether it's gerrymandering or mail-in ballots, whatever it may be.
Anyway, I think it's weak.
Pushing public persona. I don't blame him. I think it's a smart strategic move. And a bit the debate format for him too is like terrible. He performs notoriously terrible in debates. It's not a great format for him.
Really?
Like, he's good. No, he's like, I mean, he gets very triggered. He gets very triggered and very angry.
The original people couldn't handle him in debates. He just fucking destroyed all.
Well, that was like, yes. I mean, he was telling like Hillary Clinton he was going to throw her in prison and all that. That was great. That was 2016 Trump.
Like the debate killer, man. And
2016 Trump. No, you go back to 2020
instead of doing debates.
You go back to 2020. Like that's probably a big factor in why he lost. Is he fumbled the debate pretty bad because he was getting triggered.
The strong move here would be, I did not like the moderators of the last debate. These are my terms for the next debate. Take it or leave it, rather than being like, I'm not going to debate. Like, there was not even a counter. I don't know. Kind of lame.
Well, and the other thing, like, he originally offered it, and then she declined it. And now first, like, he wanted 2 debates out of the gun. She's like, no, I'm only going to do 1. And I think it's just like, fuck it. Like, if we did 1, I'm up in the polls. Like, I'm going to play your game. Like, you try to deny a second debate originally. Now you want one, but you're not getting it. Like I don't blame him.
Okay.
Second.
And then what about his request for Apple to break into the iPhones of his two assassins?
Did not hear that. It's the first time I'm hearing this. I don't think Apple should do it.
I mean, their argument is that they can't, which goes back to our previous conversation with.
Yeah. It's the first time I'm hearing this. I don't know. I'm not going to give a from the hip reaction to that. I got to think about it a little bit more.
Okay, you can give a reaction next week.
Yeah. There was something I wanted to mention. Something happened between last week and this week. I forgot. Had a great section that we could have rolled into, but I forgot it. That's on me, freaks.
Okay. Well,
what do you let me ask you? What do you think about these politicians signing artillery shells?
I mean, I think it's horrible. Like, what do you want me to say?
It's such bad optics. It's so weird.
But I mean,
weird.
I don't think that's like a partisan issue. But
no, people are trying to make it a partisan issue.
I think they both.
For those who are unaware, it happened this year twice for both parties. Like you had Josh Shapiro, governor of PA, and Doug Casey, I believe, with Zelensky signing artillery shells, Democrats, and then earlier this year you had Nikki Haley signing bombs as well. And they were trying to make it a partisan issue this week. It's like, do you not remember 6 months ago when the Republicans were doing this? Like,
yeah, I mean,
disgusting.
It doesn't matter who you elect; they will murder people.
Yeah. Sad state of the world. Sad state. This was fun. Corn.
What?
We're still in a pump. We're still up 4.44% on the week. It's a pump for ants, but it's a pump nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I think like people want to point to all these different things. Like the most important thing is that, I mean, I think the most important macro indicator is that the Fed and Treasury is finally like admitting that they can't go higher for longer on rates. And they're just going to print a shit ton of money. They're going to print a shit ton of money. And if Bitcoin didn't exist, people would have to try all these ridiculous different financial strategies to hedge against inflation and to protect themselves. Bitcoin makes it incredibly simple for people and is more powerful than any of those other tools. So I'm very grateful it exists and is available to us. I will remind people that in an inflationary environment, as people try and escape that inflation, they are just going to skewer us with cap gains tax, which is really just a malicious incentive. And it particularly hits the lower level of people because a lot of the super wealthy, super rich just forever borrow money. And they don't actually even pay cap gains tax. But it's a predatory tax to begin with, and it's even more predatory in a very high inflation environment, just because everything's denominated in the thing that's inflating. So even the things that lose money in real terms, you have to pay taxes on, which is fucking crazy. And you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. Don't lose hope and just keep pushing forward.
White Pills, we got the tools. We've got the knowledge. We're trying to help matriculate that knowledge to you freaks week in and week out to the best of our abilities. We can do this. And I think more people are waking up to this. And at no other point in human history have we had the ability to communicate and spread these ideas, the good ideas, the white pills, like we do today. And I do think it's having an effect. There's a lot of terrible shit going on in the world, but there's also a lot of good shit going on. Focus on the good. Focus your energy there. Act. Get out there. We're going to win. We got this.